I ghosted a guy on dating apps, but he found my best friend and started dating her just to get back at me. Now she won't believe me that he's using her to stalk me. I, 20F, need advice about a situation that's gotten completely out of hand. This involves my best friend Allison, 19F, and a guy named Lucas, 20M, who I matched with on a dating app months ago. Last spring, I was using dating apps pretty casually. My roommates and I would swipe together for fun, and I wasn't looking for anything serious. I matched with Lucas and we moved our conversation to Snapchat pretty quickly. He seemed okay at first, but after a few days of chatting, something felt off. He would ask really specific questions about where I hung out on campus and which dining halls I preferred. When I mentioned I had plans with friends, he would ask who I was going with and what we were doing. The questions felt invasive, especially since we had never even met in person. I have a pretty active social media presence. My Instagram has lots of photos from parties, study groups, and hanging out around campus. Allison appears in probably half of my posts since we do everything together. We've been best friends since freshman orientation and she's basically my other half. Lucas followed my Instagram after we exchanged Snapchats, and I noticed he was liking old photos going back months. He also started viewing my stories within minutes of me posting them. After about a week of talking, I decided to stop responding to his messages. The constant questions and immediate responses to everything I posted online made me uncomfortable. I never officially told him I wasn't interested, I just stopped replying. This happens all the time with dating apps, and most people get the hint and move on. During the summer break, I completely forgot about Lucas. Allison and I both went home to different states, but we texted constantly and made plans for sophomore year. When we got back to campus in August, Allison was excited about getting back into dating. She had downloaded a few new apps and was eager to meet someone. About 3 weeks into the semester, Allison came running into my dorm room with her phone in her hand. She had matched with someone and they were already planning to meet up that weekend. She showed me his profile, and my stomach dropped. It was Lucas. Same photos, same bio, everything exactly the same as I remembered from months earlier. I told Allison immediately that I had talked to him before and it hadn't worked out. I explained that he had made me uncomfortable with all the questions and the social media stalking. Allison looked at me for a moment and then said that maybe we just weren't compatible and that she wanted to give him a chance. She said that different people connect with different personalities and that she didn't want to write him off based on my experience. I felt weird about the whole thing, but Allison is an adult and I figured she could make her own decisions. I asked her not to mention that we had talked before, at least until she got to know him better and could form her own opinion. She agreed to this. Their first date went well according to Allison. They went to a coffee shop near campus and talked for about 2 hours. She came back to my room afterward and told me all about it. Lucas had been charming and funny, and they had a lot in common. She was already excited about seeing him again. The second date happened 3 days later. Allison mentioned that Lucas had suggested they meet up with some friends to make it more casual and fun. She asked if I wanted to join them, along with a few other people from our floor. I said I would think about it, but privately I hoped she would drop the idea. I didn't want to be around Lucas, and I definitely didn't want him to recognize me. The next morning, Allison knocked on my door before her first class. She looked upset and told me that Lucas had said something strange the night before. Apparently, during their phone conversation, he had mentioned that he was really attracted to Indian women specifically. Allison is blonde and white, which made his comment particularly odd. When she asked him about it, he brushed it off and said he was just being honest about his preferences. I'm Indian American, and this comment made my skin crawl. It felt like Lucas was fetishizing my ethnicity, which I had experienced before and hated. I told Allison that this was a red flag and that she should be careful. She said she would keep it in mind but that she still wanted to see where things went. That evening, Allison called me while I was studying in the library. She sounded excited and said that Lucas had brought up his interest in meeting her friends again. Specifically, he had asked about her best friend and whether she would be joining them for their next hangout. Allison had mentioned my name in passing, and Lucas had immediately asked if I was the same Maya who went to our high school. Allison told him no, that I was from a different state entirely. Lucas then asked Allison to describe what I looked like. When she mentioned that I was Indian, Lucas got quiet for a moment and then asked if I had ever used dating apps. Allison found this question strange and asked why he wanted to know. Lucas said he thought he might have seen my profile before and was just curious. At this point, Allison started to connect the dots. She asked Lucas directly if he had matched with me before, and he admitted that we had talked briefly but that I had stopped responding without explanation. He asked Allison why I had ghosted him and whether she knew what he had done wrong. Allison called me immediately after this conversation. She was confused and a little hurt that Lucas had lied about not knowing me. I reminded her that I had asked her not to mention our previous interaction and that Lucas was the one who had brought it up. She said she understood but that she felt caught in the middle of an awkward situation. Lucas texted Allison the next day and suggested they all hang out together so that he could clear the air with me. He said he was curious about what had gone wrong between us and that he thought we could all be friends. Allison asked me if I would be okay with this, and I said absolutely not. The whole thing felt manipulative and weird. But Allison really liked Lucas, and she convinced me to give it one more chance. She said that maybe there had been a misunderstanding and that Lucas deserved an opportunity to explain himself. She promised that if I felt uncomfortable at any point, we could leave immediately. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them at a restaurant off campus that weekend. Lucas was already there when Allison and I arrived, sitting in a booth in the back corner. He stood up when he saw us and gave Allison a hug. When he turned to me, he extended his hand and said it was nice to finally meet me in person. The dinner was incredibly awkward. Lucas kept asking me questions about my classes, my major, and my plans after graduation. He seemed to already know a lot of details about my life, which he could have only learned from stalking my social media or from Allison. When I mentioned that I was considering studying abroad, he immediately asked which countries I was looking at and whether I had family there. Halfway through the meal, Lucas excused himself to use the bathroom. As soon as he was gone, I told Allison that this felt wrong and that I wanted to leave. She begged me to stay and said that Lucas was just trying to be friendly. She said that he had been nothing but respectful and kind to her, and that maybe I was being too sensitive. When Lucas came back to the table, he sat down and looked directly at me. He said that he wanted to apologize for making me uncomfortable months ago and that he hoped we could start fresh. He said that Allison meant a lot to him and that it would mean a lot to him if we could all be friends. I nodded politely and said that it was fine, but I didn't mean it. Something about Lucas's behavior felt calculated and fake. The way he looked at me, the questions he asked, and the timing of everything felt too coincidental to be innocent. After dinner, Allison walked back to the dorms with me while Lucas went to his car. She thanked me for giving him a chance and said that she thought the evening had gone well. I told her that I still felt uncomfortable around Lucas and that I hoped she would understand if I didn't want to hang out with him regularly. Allison said she understood, but over the next few weeks, Lucas's name came up constantly in our conversations. He was texting her all the time, and they were hanging out almost every day. She would tell me about their dates and ask for advice about their relationship. I tried to be supportive, but something still felt off about the whole situation. 2 weeks later, Allison came to my room and said that Lucas had asked her to be his girlfriend. She was excited and happy, and I congratulated her even though I still had reservations. She said that Lucas had planned a romantic evening and that he had told her he was falling for her. But then Allison mentioned something that made my blood run cold. She said that Lucas had told her he loved how close she was to her friends, especially me. He had said that he thought it was important for couples to maintain their friendships and that he hoped to become friends with all of Allison's friends too. This felt like a red flag to me, but I didn't know how to explain my concerns without sounding jealous or paranoid. Allison was clearly happy, and I didn't want to ruin that for her. I decided to keep my mouth shut and hope that my fears were unfounded. Now it's been about a month since Allison and Lucas became official, and things have gotten progressively stranger. Lucas shows up to places where he knows I'll be, even when Allison isn't there. Last week, I was studying alone in the campus coffee shop when he walked in, ordered a drink, and sat at the table next to mine. He didn't say anything to me, but he kept glancing over and checking his phone. Yesterday, I got a friend request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. When I looked at the profile, it had no posts and no profile picture, but it was following several of my friends including Allison. I have a feeling it might be Lucas's second account, but I can't prove it. I don't know what to do. Allison is happy with Lucas, and I don't want to interfere with their relationship based on just a gut feeling. But I also can't shake the sense that Lucas didn't end up with Allison by coincidence. The whole situation feels deliberate and creepy, and I'm starting to think that Lucas pursued Allison specifically because of her connection to me. Has anyone else been in a situation like this? Am I overreacting, or should I be concerned? I don't want to lose my best friend, but I also don't want to ignore what might be a legitimate safety issue. Update 1: I posted a few weeks ago about my best friend Allison dating someone I had briefly talked to on a dating app. A lot of people in the comments said I should trust my instincts and that Lucas's behavior sounded manipulative. I wish I had listened to that advice sooner. Things have gotten much worse since my original post, and I'm honestly not sure what to do anymore. Lucas's behavior has become increasingly bizarre, and Allison seems completely oblivious to what's happening. The week after I posted, Lucas started showing up to my classes. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Our campus isn't huge, and it's normal to run into people you know between buildings. But then I realized he was specifically timing his appearances to coincide with when I was leaving certain lecture halls. He would be standing outside when I came out, and he would wave and say hi like we were close friends. When I mentioned this to Allison, she said that Lucas had started taking some electives in my major because he found the subject interesting. She thought it was sweet that he was expanding his academic interests. I asked her if she had told Lucas my class schedule, and she said she might have mentioned it in passing when they were talking about their weeks. Last Tuesday, I was leaving my chemistry lab when Lucas appeared next to me in the hallway. He asked if I wanted to grab lunch with him and Allison, but when I looked around, Allison wasn't there. Lucas said she was meeting us at the dining hall, but something about his demeanor made me uncomfortable. I told him I had other plans and walked away quickly. Later that day, Allison texted me asking why I hadn't shown up for lunch. She said Lucas had told her that I had agreed to meet them but then never appeared. When I explained what had actually happened, Allison seemed confused. She said that Lucas had told her I had specifically asked to hang out with just the two of them first to get more comfortable with him. This was obviously a lie, and I told Allison exactly what Lucas had said to me. She was quiet for a moment and then said that there must have been some kind of miscommunication. She suggested that maybe Lucas had been nervous about approaching me and had gotten his words mixed up. I started paying closer attention to Lucas's behavior after that incident. I noticed that he was liking my Instagram posts within minutes of me uploading them, even photos I posted late at night or early in the morning. He was also viewing my stories consistently, sometimes multiple times. When I posted a photo of my coffee order at a local cafe, Lucas showed up there the next day while I was studying. He acted surprised to see me and said he had never tried their pastries before. The breaking point came last weekend. Allison and I had plans to go to a party together on Saturday night. She had been looking forward to it all week because it was being thrown by one of her favorite sorority sisters. On Saturday afternoon, she called me and said that Lucas wasn't feeling well and that she was going to stay in and take care of him instead. I was disappointed but told her I understood. I decided to go to the party anyway because I had already made plans with some other friends who would be there. The party was fun, and I stayed until pretty late. I took several photos throughout the night and posted them to my Instagram story. Sunday morning, Allison called me sounding upset. She said that Lucas had seen my Instagram posts from the party and was angry that I had gone without her. According to Allison, Lucas thought it was rude of me to go to an event that we had originally planned to attend together. He had told Allison that he felt like I didn't care about her feelings and that I was being a bad friend. I was shocked by this accusation. Allison had been the one to cancel our plans, and I had every right to go to the party on my own. When I pointed this out to Allison, she said that Lucas had just been looking out for her and that he was worried about our friendship. But then Allison said something that made me realize how manipulative Lucas was being. She mentioned that Lucas had shown her screenshots of my Instagram story from the party. The photos had been posted to my story, which meant that Lucas would have had to actively check my profile and save the images in order to show them to Allison later. I asked Allison why Lucas was monitoring my social media so closely, and she didn't have a good answer. She said that Lucas cared about the people in her life and that he was just staying informed about what her friends were doing. When I pressed her on this, she got defensive and said that I was being paranoid. The conversation ended badly, with Allison accusing me of being jealous of her relationship and me accusing Lucas of being controlling and obsessive. We didn't talk for 3 days, which is the longest we had ever gone without speaking since we became friends. During those 3 days, I got 2 more friend requests from suspicious accounts. Both profiles had generic names, no posts, and were following mutual friends of mine and Allison's. I'm now convinced that Lucas is creating fake accounts to monitor my online activity. Allison and I eventually made up, but things haven't been the same between us. She seems defensive whenever I bring up concerns about Lucas, and she started sharing fewer details about her personal life with me. I can tell that Lucas is influencing her opinion of me, and it's creating a wedge in our friendship. Last week, Allison mentioned that Lucas had suggested the 3 of us should take a trip together over spring break. She seemed excited about the idea and said that Lucas thought it would be a good way for us to bond and move past our previous misunderstandings. The thought of being trapped in a car or hotel room with Lucas for several days made me panic. I told Allison that I already had spring break plans, which was a lie. She looked hurt and said that she had hoped I would be more open to spending time with Lucas. She said that he was going to be a part of her life for the foreseeable future and that it would mean a lot to her if I could make an effort to get along with him. I'm starting to realize that Lucas is systematically isolating Allison from her friends and making himself the center of her social universe. Every conversation we have now somehow revolves around Lucas and what he thinks or wants. Allison used to be independent and confident, but now she second-guesses herself and constantly seeks Lucas's approval. Yesterday, I overheard Allison talking to Lucas on the phone in our dorm hallway. She was telling him about a paper she had written for her English class, and Lucas was critiquing her argument and suggesting changes. Allison was taking notes and agreeing with everything he said, even though I know she's an excellent writer and doesn't usually need help with her assignments. When Allison got off the phone, I asked her about the paper. She said that Lucas had some really good insights and that she was lucky to have someone so smart to help her with her coursework. This was concerning because Allison had always been proud of her academic independence. I'm worried about my friend, but I'm also worried about myself. Lucas's attention has become increasingly focused on me, and I don't feel safe on campus anymore. I've started varying my routes between classes and avoiding places where I know he might show up. I've also made my Instagram account private and blocked the suspicious accounts that I think belong to him. Several people have told me that I should report Lucas's behavior to campus security, but I don't have concrete proof that he's doing anything wrong. Following someone on social media and showing up to public places isn't technically harassment, even if it feels threatening to me. I'm considering transferring to a different school, but that feels like giving up and letting Lucas win. I shouldn't have to change my entire life because some guy can't take a hint. But I also don't know how much more of this I can handle, especially if Allison continues to take his side over mine. Update 2: My situation has gotten significantly more complicated since my last update. Lucas's behavior has escalated to the point where I'm genuinely concerned for both my safety and Allison's well-being, but new information has come to light that changes everything I thought I knew about this situation. About a month ago, Allison started acting differently around me. She seemed distracted and anxious, and our conversations became stilted and uncomfortable. At first, I assumed this was because of the ongoing tension around Lucas, but I soon realized something else was going on. Allison began canceling plans with me at the last minute, always with excuses related to Lucas. She would say that he needed help with an assignment, or that he had planned a surprise date, or that he wasn't feeling well and needed her to take care of him. Our weekly study sessions stopped happening, and our daily coffee runs became increasingly rare. When we did spend time together, Allison seemed distracted and kept checking her phone. She would get text messages from Lucas and immediately respond, even in the middle of our conversations. If she didn't respond quickly enough, Lucas would call her, and she would always answer no matter what we were doing. 2 weeks ago, I ran into Allison's roommate Jessica in the library. Jessica and I aren't particularly close, but we've always been friendly because of our connection through Allison. Jessica seemed relieved to see me and asked if we could talk privately. Jessica told me that Allison had been having frequent arguments with Lucas over the phone in their dorm room. She said the arguments usually happened late at night and that Lucas's voice was often loud enough for her to hear through the phone. Jessica was concerned because Allison would cry after these conversations and would sometimes stay awake all night texting with Lucas to resolve whatever issue they were having. According to Jessica, Lucas had started criticizing Allison's appearance and her friends. Jessica had overheard Lucas telling Allison that she needed to lose weight and that her clothes were unflattering. He had also told Allison that her friends were a bad influence on her and that she spent too much time socializing instead of focusing on their relationship. Jessica said that Allison had become increasingly isolated and that she rarely left their room except to go to classes and to meet Lucas. Allison had stopped attending social events and had declined invitations from other friends. Jessica was worried about Allison's mental health but didn't know how to help without overstepping boundaries. This information was disturbing but not entirely surprising given what I had observed about Lucas's controlling behavior. What Jessica told me next, however, completely blindsided me. Jessica said that Lucas had been asking Allison detailed questions about me for weeks. He wanted to know my class schedule, my work schedule, where I liked to study, which restaurants I frequented, and which parties I planned to attend. Allison had been providing this information willingly because Lucas had convinced her that he was trying to plan positive interactions to improve our relationship. Jessica had found this concerning and had asked Allison why Lucas was so interested in my personal life. Allison had told her that Lucas felt bad about our rocky start and that he wanted to find opportunities to run into me casually so that we could have natural conversations and hopefully become friends. But Jessica had noticed that Lucas never actually approached me during these planned encounters. Instead, he would position himself where he could observe me without directly interacting. Jessica had started paying attention to this pattern and had realized that Lucas was essentially stalking me with Allison's unwitting assistance. When Jessica confronted Allison about this, Allison had become defensive and accused Jessica of being paranoid and jealous of her relationship. Allison had told Jessica that Lucas was just trying to be a good boyfriend by taking an interest in her friends, and that Jessica wouldn't understand because she was single. Jessica's revelation made me realize that the situation was even worse than I had thought. Lucas wasn't just pursuing Allison to get closer to me, he was using Allison as an unwitting accomplice in his stalking behavior. Allison genuinely believed she was helping Lucas integrate into her social circle, but she was actually providing him with detailed information about my movements and activities. I knew I had to talk to Allison directly about what Jessica had told me, but I was worried about how she would react. Allison had become increasingly defensive about Lucas, and I was concerned that confronting her would push her further away and deeper into Lucas's control. I decided to approach the conversation carefully. I invited Allison to dinner at our favorite restaurant off campus, somewhere Lucas wouldn't think to look for us. During dinner, I told Allison that I was worried about her and that I had noticed changes in her behavior and mood over the past few months. Allison immediately became defensive and said that she was fine and that any changes were just because she was busy with her relationship. She said that Lucas made her happy and that she was tired of people trying to interfere with her personal life. I told Allison what Jessica had shared with me about Lucas's questions regarding my schedule and activities. Allison's face went pale, and she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said that Lucas had explained to her that he was trying to plan positive interactions with me, and that she had thought she was helping both of us by providing that information. When I explained to Allison how Lucas had been using that information to essentially stalk me rather than to create friendly encounters, she looked genuinely shocked. She said that Lucas had told her he was just shy about approaching me directly and that he needed to feel prepared before having conversations with me. I could see that Allison was starting to realize that Lucas had manipulated her into participating in behavior that she would never have agreed to if she had understood his true intentions. She looked embarrassed and upset, and I could tell she was beginning to question other aspects of Lucas's behavior. But then Allison said something that revealed how deep Lucas's psychological control over her had become. She said that even if Lucas's methods were questionable, his intentions were good and that he really did want to be friends with me. She said that Lucas loved her and that people in love sometimes make mistakes or use poor judgment. I realized that Lucas had convinced Allison to rationalize and excuse his behavior even when she could clearly see that it was wrong. This is a classic pattern in emotionally abusive relationships, and it made me understand that Allison was in much more danger than I had initially thought. Over the next week, I researched emotional abuse and manipulation tactics. I learned about love bombing, gaslighting, isolation, and other strategies that abusive partners use to control their victims. Lucas's behavior fit these patterns perfectly, and I realized that Allison was trapped in an abusive relationship. I also learned that directly confronting the abuser or trying to convince the victim to leave often backfires and can make the situation worse. Abusive partners typically escalate their controlling behavior when they feel threatened, and they often succeed in further isolating their victims from potential sources of support. This put me in an impossible position. I wanted to help Allison, but I also needed to protect myself from Lucas's obsessive behavior. I was also worried that if I pushed too hard, Lucas would convince Allison to cut off contact with me entirely, which would leave her even more isolated and vulnerable. Last week, I made a decision that I'm still not sure was right. I told Allison that I was concerned about Lucas's behavior and that I thought she should consider talking to someone about her relationship, like a counselor at the campus health center. I also told her that I couldn't continue to spend time around Lucas because his behavior made me feel unsafe. Allison reacted badly to this conversation. She said that I was being dramatic and that I was trying to sabotage her relationship because I was jealous. She accused me of never giving Lucas a fair chance and said that I was a bad friend for not being supportive of her happiness. We haven't spoken since that conversation, which was 5 days ago. This is the longest we've ever gone without talking, and I'm heartbroken about the state of our friendship. But I'm also relieved to have some distance from the toxic situation that Lucas created. I've been staying vigilant about my personal safety and have noticed that Lucas's stalking behavior has actually intensified since Allison and I stopped talking. He showed up outside my dorm building twice this week, and I've seen him following me across campus on several occasions. I think he's frustrated that he no longer has access to information about my activities through Allison, so he's resorting to more direct surveillance. I'm planning to report Lucas's behavior to campus security this week. I've been documenting his activities and taking photos when possible, so I should have enough evidence to support my complaint. I'm also considering reaching out to Allison's parents or other family members to let them know about my concerns regarding Lucas's controlling behavior. Final update: I'm writing this final update because several people have messaged me asking for news about my situation with Lucas and Allison. I wish I could say that everything worked out well, but the reality is much more complicated and sadder. After my last post, I followed through on my decision to report Lucas's behavior to campus security. I had documented multiple incidents of him following me, showing up at my classes, and monitoring my social media activity. I also provided screenshots of the fake accounts that I believed belonged to him and a detailed timeline of his escalating behavior. The security officer I spoke with was professional and took my concerns seriously. She explained that they could issue Lucas a no-contact directive, which would prohibit him from approaching me or attempting to communicate with me. If Lucas violated this directive, He could face disciplinary action including suspension or expulsion. The security office contacted Lucas within 24 hours of my report. According to the officer who called to update me, Lucas had denied most of my allegations but had agreed to stay away from me going forward. She said that Lucas claimed his presence in various locations had been coincidental and that he had no intention of making me uncomfortable. For about a week, Lucas seemed to comply with the no-contact directive. I didn't see him around campus, and his activity on my social media account stopped completely. I started to feel hopeful that the situation might be resolving itself. But then Allison reached out to me for the first time since our fight. She sent me a text message asking if we could meet to talk. I was hesitant because I worried that Lucas had sent her to contact me, but I also missed my friend and hoped that maybe she was ready to see the situation more clearly. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from campus. Allison looked tired and thinner than I remembered. She was wearing baggy clothes and kept her head down for most of our conversation. When she did look up, I could see dark circles under her eyes. Allison told me that Lucas was furious about the no-contact directive and that he blamed me for trying to ruin his college experience. She said that he had been angry with her for several days after the directive was issued, accusing her of not defending him adequately and of choosing me over him. According to Allison, Lucas had demanded that she cut off all contact with me permanently. He had told her that our friendship was toxic and that I was obviously jealous of their relationship. He had said that if Allison truly loved him, she would prioritize his feelings over her loyalty to me. Allison had initially resisted this demand, which had led to several intense arguments between them. Lucas had threatened to break up with her if she continued to maintain any relationship with me. He had also told her that he couldn't trust her anymore because she had allowed me to poison her mind against him. Eventually, Allison had agreed to Lucas's ultimatum because she couldn't handle the constant conflict and emotional pressure. She had blocked my number and unfollowed me on social media, but she said that she had immediately regretted these actions and had felt terrible about abandoning our friendship. Allison told me that she had started to see Lucas's behavior more clearly over the past few weeks. She said that he had become increasingly controlling and critical, monitoring her activities and demanding detailed accounts of how she spent her time. He had also started restricting her access to other friends and had convinced her to drop out of several extracurricular activities. But despite recognizing these problems, Allison said that she felt trapped in the relationship. Lucas had convinced her that no one else would ever love her as much as he did, and that her friends and family were just jealous of what they had together. He had also made her financially dependent on him by paying for her meals and activities, then using this generosity as leverage during arguments. Allison asked if I thought she should break up with Lucas, and I told her that I couldn't make that decision for her. I said that I was concerned about her safety and well-being, and that I would support her no matter what she decided to do. I also gave her information about the campus counseling center and the domestic violence resources available in our area. We talked for about 2 hours, and by the end of the conversation, Allison seemed more hopeful and determined. She said that she was going to start documenting Lucas's controlling behavior and that she was considering reaching out to a counselor for guidance on how to safely end the relationship. I felt cautiously optimistic after our meeting. It seemed like Allison was finally beginning to understand the reality of her situation and was taking steps to protect herself. We agreed to stay in touch through email since Lucas had access to her phone and social media accounts. But 3 days later, I received an email from Allison that shattered my hope. She wrote that she had talked to Lucas about our conversation and that he had helped her realize that I was manipulating her and trying to destroy their relationship. She said that Lucas had shown her articles about how jealous friends often try to sabotage happy couples, and that everything I had said fit this pattern perfectly. Allison wrote that she had decided to trust Lucas completely and to cut off all contact with me permanently. She said that she was sorry for any confusion or mixed signals she had given me, but that her relationship with Lucas was her top priority. She asked me not to contact her again and said that any further attempts at communication would be considered harassment. I was devastated by this email, but I wasn't entirely surprised. I had learned enough about abusive relationships to understand that victims often return to their abusers multiple times before permanently leaving. Lucas had clearly recognized the threat that our conversation posed to his control over Allison, and he had moved quickly to eliminate that threat. I respected Allison's request for no contact, even though it was clearly being dictated by Lucas rather than representing her true feelings. I knew that continued attempts to reach out would likely make her situation worse and could potentially escalate Lucas's behavior toward both of us. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my own healing and safety. I changed my class schedule where possible to avoid places where Lucas might expect to find me. I also talked to several trusted friends about the situation so that they could help keep an eye on my safety and well-being. About 2 weeks ago, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Allison had withdrawn from school and moved back home with her parents. Nobody seemed to know the exact reason for her departure, but there were rumors that she had been struggling with her mental health and academic performance. I don't know whether Allison's withdrawal was voluntary or whether her parents intervened after learning about her situation with Lucas. I also don't know whether Lucas followed her home or whether the distance has given her an opportunity to break free from his control. I've thought about reaching out to Allison's parents to share what I know about Lucas's abusive behavior, but I'm worried that this would violate Allison's privacy and could potentially make things worse for her. Instead, I've decided to trust that the adults in her life are capable of recognizing the signs of abuse and providing appropriate support. As for Lucas, I haven't seen him on campus since Allison left school. I heard through the grapevine that he had also withdrawn, though I don't know if this is temporary or permanent. Part of me is relieved that he's gone, but I'm also worried that he might be continuing to harass Allison in her hometown where she has fewer resources and support systems. I've learned a lot from this experience about the insidious nature of emotional abuse and the difficulty of helping someone who is trapped in an abusive relationship. I've also learned to trust my instincts when someone's behavior feels wrong, even if I can't immediately articulate why. I hope that Allison is safe and that she's getting the help she needs to recover from what Lucas put her through. I also hope that someday, when she's ready, she'll reach out and we can rebuild our friendship. But I understand that this may never happen, and I've had to make peace with that possibility. For anyone reading this who sees similarities to their own situation, please know that your instincts are probably right and that there are people and resources available to help you. Trust yourself, prioritize your safety, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.